Okay, I may have already made this video, but I'm going to make another one. So I keep getting asked why POSIX or Perl. That's my mantra for 2025. POSIX or Perl. It's the title of the video. I've already talked about this. I'm going to talk about it again because there's a lot of new information coming out. So you know, let's get into it, as they say on YouTube. The first reason that I'm getting rid of Bash is Bash burned me bad. I've been using Bash as my primary .files scripting language for 4 years, and you know, gave up POSIX. So 4 years ago, there's videos of this of me. 4 years ago, everything in my .files was either Perl or POSIX, and then I found Go. There was a little bit of Node in there for a while, and for command line scripts in my .files, and you know. And so I've been going, as you know, I've been re-going through all my .files. I'm like, well, what do I want to do? And now my new approach is that I just want to be able to, anything that's got Get on it, and pretty much just everywhere, including multi-user, systems that are jump boxes for my work and everything. I can use GitHub and I can just do git pull and I can get everything down, right? So I can pull all the scripts. So and so there's a couple of reasons. So let's first talk about. So let me just kind of net out what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about why I'm not using Bash anymore in terms of Bash. We're going to talk about POSIX and the things I've complained about with POSIX and why I don't agree with those complaints anymore now that we have shell check and thing. And the third thing is going to be all the mistakes I made around putting things into Go which don't belong in Go, and how Perl fixes all of that. And I really want to talk about this. I've talked about it a lot already. I've written about it a lot. If you want to get the detailed summary, but the bottom line. So the first thing is Bash. Bash has absolutely abysmally bad regular expression handling. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just go try to do any regular expressions in Bash. You use the double brackets, and then you get the non-escaping thing. That's how I found out that Bash does not do any kind of expansion within double brackets, which is cool and safer than POSIX. But it's still. And then the first time I got burned by this is I tried to do a pro regular expression in my match. Couldn't do it. Another thing you couldn't do is you can't do exclamation point tilde, which I could put on the screen, but I'm not going to, which says if it doesn't match this regular expression, which you can do in Perl. So you'd have to put the plus, the negative thing up above, and but it's not pretty. It's not pretty at all. And not to mention the fact that when you try to get those particular fields and you because they're extended regular expressions and not Perl regular expressions, which is defining the industry, then you have to put a slash in front of the parenthesis. In front of the, is that right? Yeah, parenthesis, in order to get a field. And then that field, you have to, in order to use the field someplace else, you don't just use $1. You can't do that. You can't do that in Bash. So you have to actually do Bash rematch 1, which is this big long ass thing just to get the first field, and then you have to do Bash rematch 2 or 3 or whatever. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. I kind of looked the other way. I kind of made excuses for it as like, okay, there's a lot of other great things about Bash, particularly parameter expansion, which we'll get to, and the parameter expansion stuff was cool and all, but okay, so the regex thing just doesn't do it, right? So I found myself reaching for Perl and calling out to a subshell or something like that because it did it properly. Not to mention that Bash has no clue about Unicode regular expressions and any of the stuff that's been redefined in Perl to match regular expression, to match Unicode families. And if you don't know what Unicode is, go read about it. But if you can't in Perl, you can actually use capital P and stuff like that to match entire families of Unicode code points. And you can't do any of that in Bash. You can't do any of that in Bash. You have to use the stupid POSIX things that are with like the 2 colons and all that. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. And if you come from Perl, it's been a pain point. It's been a pain point for the last 3 years that I've been overlooking. And quite frankly, that leads me to another pain point, which is a lot of times you just want to do a find and replace, right? So you can get away with that using parameter expansion. Well, that doesn't work in POSIX at all. Making everything into lowercase with a parameter expansion with 2 commas, or parameter expansion with 2 chars to make it all uppercase. These are all things that Perl has in 2 characters, LC, UC, and a bunch of these things are all covered by Perl already. So the long and short of it is the only thing that Bash gets you, is a little bit more power for a shell script on a system that's going to default to Bash. And so if you only, and I regularly write Bash for work, even though the installer scripts that I write should be written in Perl. They really should be. That's the sweet spot. They're doing a lot of text manipulation. Bash is horrible for text manipulation. It's absolutely horrible for it. I have put Bash through all kinds of convoluted things, to put it to the test. So I can say this very confidently from a place of love for Bash and wanting to like improve it. But it's just no, just no. And so let me go back to let me show you. So here's my clip program, right? And we've been doing we're doing a whole series of me porting this thing here. This code right here, people say that Perl is hard to read, right? They say, oh, it's like read, write once. This is Bash doing the same thing that Perl would do, right? It's just as dense. It's just, in fact, it's even harder to read. Not to mention the fact that you only get integer mathematics with Bash. You can't do any actual math here. You have to like shell out to BC to get it. With Perl, you get it built in. Not only that, you get binary packability, so you can pack and unpack. You can use map. You can use very functional based programming, map, grep. You can like iterate over things. It's just crazy. Not to mention the fact that Perl is like one quarter the size of Bash in memory consumption. So there's less shelling out. And even if you do shell out and you use Perl as a shell on steroids, which is how I use it. I don't use it as a Python replacement. We actually had somebody report that somebody was saying that Perl was inspired by Python and it came from Python. I thought that was so funny. We just heard that the other day. Anyway, you can't do any of this in embedded documentation or anything. Perl does all of that automatically. You use Perl doc, and then you can make your Perl program be its own man page. You cannot do that in Bash at all. This is me trying to do it right here. This setting of default values is like crazy stupid compared to Perl, which you can use multiple options and you can have them resolved based on the first one that's truify. And then, so yeah, so that this is what we're doing. This is the reason. I mean, these parameter expansion things are much easier. They're actually easier to understand in Perl. So I'm just done with Bash. I tried so hard to love it. I really did. I did. I became a huge Bash fanboy. And, the whole time, it wasn't until I started doing some really serious text manipulation that I started going, man, this is not covering it. But here's the worst part. And I almost don't want to admit this because I'm actually really, really embarrassed by this. So you guys know I made Bonsai, right? I made Bonsai. I wrote my own command line framework. Why did I make it? I made it because I wanted command line completion. I wanted better documentation. I wanted command line completion. And I wanted full-blown regular expression parsing and all the other things, great things that come with Go. And I wrote Bonsai specifically for one purpose. The purpose for Bonsai initially purpose for Bonsai wasn't to make awesome multi-call binaries, akin to BusyBox and Alpine. That wasn't the primary reason. The primary reason was I wanted to get rid of my 360 shell scripts and put them all into one monolith Bonsai thing. And that's why I made it. Why? Because I was using Bash. This kind of makes me angry because, the reason I did, and I still think that that's a good thing. And if you're a hacker and you want to make a rootkit or a HomeKit or something like that, or you want a multi-call binary, you want a single binary that's got everything in it, great. You can use Go embedded file system. I'm still a huge fan of Go, but as you can already tell, in fact, I've got another thing here. It's called Shell Perl Go Bliss. This is in my blog. You can go read it. But this is really bliss right here. And I'm still pro Go, but the point that I regret about Bonsai is I made Bonsai because I didn't have Perl. And if I had Perl to do all of the manipulation and everything and be able to write 10, 20 scripts a day, which is sometimes what I end up doing, I could have busted those things out without a problem. And I could never, ever have done it that fast in Go. And if I did, it would have been annoying because I'd had to redeploy my binary and all that stuff. Whereas if you have shell script, you just get pulled down from your Proxmox box over here and I got the shell script. I can't do that workflow with my compiled Go code, as cool as it is, because the compiled Go code can't just be pulled down on a repo. I could save binaries in my GitHub repo if I wanted to. I actually did that for a while, but I don't want to do that. Do you know what works really well in that kind of scenario with that kind of workflow? Shell scripts and Python and Perl and that kind of thing, right? So you want to do git, pull, and that kind of thing, right? So I'm going to do a whole course on Perl now, because I've been rediscovering how absolutely amazing it is as a shell on steroids. That's what it is. It's way better than Bash. I'm still using Bash as an interactive shell, and I'm still using Z shell as an interactive. I will consider using Z shell as an interactive shell. You know why? Because I don't care. I don't care anymore. All my RC scripts are going to be in POSIX shell. They'll work on anything. And I have multiples of them because it doesn't matter, because I'm planning on pulling down the repo using git pull from a master repo that's got all my config in there. And that frees me to make 300, 400, 600 Perl scripts and POSIX scripts. I don't care, because they're all going to come down instantaneously when I do a git pull. The reason I made Bonsai is because I made another video about my conversion over to this idea of having everything in a repo, as opposed to, oh, I've got 2 or 3 files I've got to SCP or FTP over. I already did a whole video on that. Go watch that. But now that I know that I can, who cares how much stuff is in my dot files, as long as it's not big ass binary files that are going to bloat my thing out of control, then I can git pull my dot files and rebase every once in a while. And I can have 300-400 scripts in there. It doesn't matter. And they can all be one-liners. And the reason I like this is because when it comes to dot files and when it comes to my own personal configuration and writing my own on-the-fly filters for Vim and everything like that, flexibility is king. It's really paramount that I am able to like immediately write something as fast as I'm thinking about it and then move on to a thing. And I've written like 5 or 6 Twitch, integration scripts just tonight that basically, Perl is the king of glue languages. And so I can like pull together JQ, which has been written, and I can pull together the Twitch API command line tool. I can pull together the GitHub tool. I can pull them all together and paste them together to do, what Perl's greatest strength is the shell on steroids that pulls together, glues together all the other things. And then if I have something that's rudimentary, it becomes shell, POSIX shell. So as soon as I start needing to do extra things, I'm like reaching for Perl. And as soon as I'm starting to do things that really don't like a lot of external dependencies, or maybe I want to, run some middleware stuff or something like that, or I want, a multi-call binary, or I want to make a container out of something, then yeah, Go makes a lot of sense. The point of it is, I would not have spent so much time, I love Go, but I would not have spent so much time writing Go to replace my shell scripts had I had Perl. Had I had Perl, it would have been Perl all the way the whole entire time. And quite honestly, we're doing this thing where we're converting this bash script to Go, and I still feel like that's the best choice there, because my Eclipse tool can run on Windows. It can run on anything. It can run. I'm not talking about Windows running shell. It can be run on Windows like by itself using PowerShell if you want. That would be a reason to use Go. It's a really solid reason to use Go. That is, those kind of things you don't want for Perl. But for my own bash replacements that are just in my dot files. And by the way, I've made other videos about how important it is to not use suffixes on your scripts. This is why. This is exactly the reason why. I have 360 shell scripts that have to change, and most of those are going to be changed from bash to Perl. If I had .sh on all of those suffixes and all of those scripts were interacting with one another by name, I would be royally broken right now. And because I did it right, I followed the unique convention of naming an executable whatever, nobody cares. I'm able to switch around. Some of the scripts might actually be better as Python, and I can switch the script and make it Python instead of Perl or instead of bash, or I can go back to POSIX shell. It doesn't matter because I don't have a suffix. So if you are still putting suffixes on the end of your shell scripts, stop. Please stop. For the good of humanity, you're going to kill the children. Don't do it. People set an awk for text manipulation. Bash is definitely terrible. Bash is terrible for it. Sed and awk are horrible for text manipulation. Absolutely horrible. Sed-i and awk-i are not supported. They're not POSIX. You can't do in-place edits. With awk and sed, unless you grep, even grep, you have to like go out of your way to use a Perl compatible regular expression on something that may or may not be installed. If you have Perl, you have all of that for free for 1/4 the RAM size consumption. That blew me away. When I saw that the Perl interpreter is smaller than awk, and we're not talking because it's just dynamically linked libraries. It's fundamentally smaller. That blew my mind. That actually blew my mind that people are still, saying bad things and trash talking Perl in this era. So for most platforms, Perl will work anywhere that there's Git. So anywhere that there is a Git, there will be Perl. And one of the really important things I need to tell you, and I think I may have said it already, but the Git project announced that in first quarter 2025, they are requiring Perl version 5.26, which is amazing because they're already up to like 0.38 on things. And so, it's going to be really great to take part in that. And if anything, I was always afraid that the Git project was going to pull Perl out of the project, and instead they're upgrading it. You go figure. And I think it's because they actually realize how amazing it is for text processing. There is nothing better on the planet for text processing. I swear to God, I will go to my grave on that. There is no better language on planet Earth for text processing. And most of systems DE work and system administration and a large amount of DevOps and Kubernetes, YAML, all of that stuff, it's all text processing, people. It's all Unix. It's all text processing. And if you are not taking advantage of the most powerful text processing language on the planet, I don't care how old it is, you're doing yourself a disservice. You really are. That's all.